Hal Miller Jacobs and wife Sandy have been members of Temple Emunah for nearly 50 years. Hal is the former adult ed chair and coordinated Haftarah assignments. Additionally, he is a co-founder of Minyan Katan, Community Chevra Kadisha of Greater Boston, and most importantly, Kosher Dill Pickleball. Joelle Gunther, her husband Leon, and daughter Erica joined Temple Emunah in 1978 and were married here in 1979. Her first volunteer experience was in our Emunah kitchen and then coordinating meals at Met State in Rosie's Place. Joelle was a member of the first adult bat mitzvah class in 1985 and the first Maya class. She was on the first Billy Daldwin preschool board and is currently on the board again and sang in the Makalyala. She's involved in Emunah life through landscaping, kitchen, Wednesday morning class, Minyan Katan, theme nights, and racial justice action group. Outside of shul, Joelle is busy with family, including 10 delightful grandchildren, social justice actions, and her neighborhood community.
Thank you. Several years ago, I was invited by the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs to talk on the topic of tahara. This is the preparing the body of the deceased for burial. Several of us in this congregation do this on a volunteer basis. We wash, we dress, and place in the coffin prior to burial. Before I started to speak, the master of ceremony said to me, "Oh, and by the way, you've got to start with a joke." So wait a minute, you know the topic I'm talking about. He says, yeah. But the rule here is everybody has to start their talk with a joke, or else these guys will be asleep in 2 minutes. You got to start with a joke. I said, a joke? How about a humorous story? All right, a humorous story. We'll do that. Several of us are doing a tahara one evening, and we usually leave our cell phones upstairs so they don't disturb us during this process. One guy forgot to put his cell phone upstairs, and his cell phone rings, and he just, as he does always, he answers it, and the voice says, "Is this Bed Bath and Beyond?" And he says, "Well, we do have kind of a bed here. We are doing a bath, but we're really focused on the beyond." This week's Parsha is Parshat Re'eh, where we have choices, as Rabbi Lerner had said, told us choices that we have. And today we are extending that concept. But I realize that this may be very difficult for some people. Very difficult. So if anybody feels uncomfortable listening to this, please feel free to leave. And several people have already left, and they are not here. For example, my wife is not here. She is uncomfortable with this topic. And as I kid her, you like to say, you'll do this over my dead body. So as in Parshat Re'eh, I have very clear choices that I had made thinking about this for quite a while. First, the choice is, and there are two major aspects of my choices. With many of you, I share the choice I have made of being active in Judaism. That is one of my choices. I grew up Orthodox, and there are a whole list of things you're supposed to do, and I did them, but I did wrestle with my Judaism, as Rabbi Lerner says to do. We're supposed to wrestle with our Judaism. And I concluded that Judaism is a blueprint for how we should be living together in a society. That is really what it's all about, how we should live and treat each other, and especially, as we know many times, how we treat the stranger, always emphasized throughout the Torah. Well, that went on for quite a while. However, in my life, after a very brief and disastrous marriage, I gave up my Jewish life. Lobster, folks, is overrated, let me tell you that. I'm a graduate student at Tufts University. One Friday night, I said, I have to find a shul. Don't ask where this came from. I have no idea. But all of a sudden, I have to have a shul on Friday night. Whew. Well, I found out that Hillel was closed. But somebody said, why don't you go to this house on Boston Ave, Chavarat Shalom? I said, what? Chavarat Shalom? Some of you may be familiar with Chavarat Shalom. I went to Chavarat Shalom. That was it. I started learning with Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi. Judaism became meaningful to me again. And guess what? I was back. So Judaism is one of the choices. Environmentalism is the other choice I made. Judaism was teaching us how we should live together. Environmentalism was teaching us how we should live in this wonderful world that God gave us before we inadvertently destroy it. I drove a lot between New York and Boston at that time in my life, and I decided to stop giving money to the gas-producing countries that were either hating Israel or at war with it. For this and for the environment, I got myself an electric car many years ago, which I still drive. So these two choices of Judaism and environmentalism have come together as I reach the twilight of my life. And my choices for the future are as follows. After I'm gone, I want a tahara by the community Chevra Kadisha. I want no embalming. I want no cremation, and particularly if violates my Jewish principles and is counter to the common perception that it's environmentally sound, which it is not. I want a grave without a cement liner and without a cover, as many of you who have been to ceremonies have seen. And here's a tough one. I want no coffin. I want to be buried as they do in Israel in the tachrichim, in the shrouds. At my gravesite, I want no monumental stone put up. A little plaque, that will do. Finally, as I've told Rabbi Lerner, I told him the joke I want him to tell at my funeral. He, of course, says it's a bit edgy, and I really can't do that. Many of these choices are labeled as green burial, although there is no accepted standard for what is actually a green burial. Joelle has experienced something like that and is here to tell us about her experience. Joelle?
My sister-in-law, Robin, blessed memory, was a well-known architect. Her focus in her work was reducing construction impact and maintaining sustainability. When she died, her request was to have a green burial, maintaining her values throughout her time on Earth. Robin's burial was my first experience, my only experience, with green natural burial. First, let me tell you what was missing. There was no large backhoe looming in the distance, as no machines were involved. No clanking of mechanism lowering a casket into the grave. No banging of rocks hitting a casket. No thud of the cement lid covering the grave liner. What I experienced was spiritual and peaceful. The soft earth covering her, the bouquet of flowers tossed into her grave was like a rainbow lifting her soul. I found comfort knowing that she would be sustaining new life through the growth of wildflowers and trees. I never expected to feel comfort, warmth, and closure. But I did. It was Robin's final gift to me.
Thank you, Joelle. Temple Amunna has a burial ground in Beit Olam East in Wayland, and Rabbi Lerner and I have had discussions with the head of the Jewish Cemetery Association and controlling person who controls the ceremony about allowing green burials in our area. As of today, that has not yet been allowed. I realize this is a difficult area of difficult discussion, so at the Kiddush luncheon, there is a table that has been designated, a table where you can come and disagree or agree or ask questions. And Joelle and I will be there, and we appreciate your comments. Shabbat Shalom.